Afternoon and welcome. I'd like to call this special council meeting to order. Councillor Beatty, Briscoe and Seven provides regrets for tonight's meeting or this afternoon's meeting. Let's begin with the land acknowledgement and a moment of silent reflection. We acknowledge that Stratford is positioned on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral Island and Wanderers peoples. As we gather, we are reminded that the city of Stratford is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples today. We acknowledge that Stratford is situated on land that was shared between the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral Island and Wanderers peoples. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and play on this land. Please allow me to share the respectful Stratford statement. Corporation of the City of Stratford is committed to providing quality service to all members of the public, council, and our employees. Our goal is to promote a safe, healthy, respectful, inclusive, and positive environment. We have a responsibility to treat people with respect by creating safe and respectful spaces. It is the city's expectation that all present will be respectful. Madam Clerk, the meeting is yours.
Through your worship, item 2 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations, and if so, please state the general nature thereof.
None noted.
Item 3 is the official plan review discussion papers presentation, and as noted, item 3.1, the supervisor of planning, policy, and placemaking will introduce the report and then this consultant.
Good evening. This special council meeting is part of the city's ongoing official plan review. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that the One Planet principles applied to this report. These were deleted from this report. These policies are as follows: health and happiness, equity and local economy, culture and community, land and nature, travel and transport, zero carbon energy. This evening, we are joined by Matt Alexander of WSP, who is here on behalf of the city's consultant. Matt will speak to the 4 of the 5 discussion papers. These papers are known as a cultural city, a green city, a connected and mobile city, and a sustainable city. Together, these materials explore key policy themes that help inform the official plan review. I now welcome Matt to tell us more about this discussion.
Mr. Alexander, welcome. Would you prefer for council to hold questions till the value presentation, or what's your preference?
We can do that. The presentation has a number of natural race chapters.
Yes.
And I thought that we could have questions at that time.
Okay. You indicate when you're ready, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak about the official plan project and to walk through the policy policy directions papers that we've prepared for the city. I have a clicker here, so let's see if that works. Great. So here's a brief overview. We'll have an introduction, talk about the project status, and then walk through 4 of the discussion papers. The 5th one had some additional scope required, and so that will be coming at a later time. Then we'll touch on next steps, and I have an item here for discussion, but I think in order to keep things maybe animated at the end of each chapter, where we discuss the policy directions reports, we can ask some specific questions about that, and then more general questions and discussion at the end. The official plan review was initiated partly because the current official plan was adopted in 1993 and last updated in 2015. So it's about due for an update and refresh. The official plan review is intended to be a more strategic, or the updated of the new official plan is intended to be more strategic and forward thinking, equipping the city to plan for future change. The official plan addresses the needs of the cities. Or will address the needs of the city and the requirements under the Planning Act and provincial planning statement. So if you've been keeping up with planning news, there's been a number of changes in the last number of years, decades plus. And so it is necessary to update the official plan or provide new official plan to address those. Key policy drivers for this new official planning project are a new provincial planning statement, which came into effect in 2024, as well as a number of updates to the Planning Act over the years. The requirements under the Planning Act are that the official plan must conform with the provincial plans that are in effect and be consistent with policy statements, including the provincial planning statement, when making planning decisions. So the official plan gives guidance on how to do that. Official plan policies are also, of course, influenced by the city's local master plans and strategic initiatives, including transportation and servicing related plans. We'll touch on the specific ones that apply. Public engagement and direction from council is also incredibly important, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about this. Public input, stakeholder input, and input from council helps me as a consultant understand what all the local priorities are so that we can make sure we address those. So we're currently near the end of phase 3, and by the end of tonight, we will be at the end of phase 3. Phase 1 of this project identified some big questions, compiled big questions about what we want the new official plan to address. It also involved compiling background information and documenting policy gaps and opportunities that we can address in the official plan. Phase 2 identified how many residents, homes, and jobs are needed to be planned for in the next 20 to 30 years. And so that was work undertaken by our partners at Watson and Associates. And phase 3 was a more detailed review and analysis of these key subjects that are relevant to the official plan review, such as growth management, population growth, housing growth, cultural heritage, sustainability, natural heritage, economic development, transportation, and infrastructure. So it's a lot to cover, and that's why we've got 5 different discussion papers about how to address those. So phase 3.
Anything that we need to be aware of?
It looks like it's bypassing this worship, but if we do have to exit just as much as possible, try and avoid the elevators, you can, and keep those available for those who need them, just in case of power loss. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So phase 3 was the development of these 5 different discussion papers. The discussion papers summarize key policy directions and proposed approaches to address major policy issues. Try to write them so that they all follow the same kind of structure, so you know where to find information related to each subject matter. Following this presentation and this meeting, we'll take all the input over to you. We'll take all the input that we received from this meeting, as well as anything else that comes in. You see the number of emails, any input from members of the community, and summarize that in a consultation summary report. All of that will help inform the official plan when we draft it. So we'll get into the specific policy direction. So a cultural city, obviously very important for Stratford. This is talking about cultural heritage, so historic buildings, historic places, historic landscapes, as well as some of the more ephemeral cultural things, you know, the events that take place and people's sense of community. Key policies that inform this policy directions report are, of course, the Planning Act, the Ontario Heritage Act, Bill 23 amendments, which were related to heritage registries and listings, the designation process, and heritage conservation districts, the provincial planning statement, which had some new direction and definitions related to culture, Ontario Regulation 906, which is related to criteria for evaluating and evaluation supporting heritage listings and designations. The Ontario Heritage Toolkit is an important consideration, and provincial line statement definitions. So I'm going to try to keep this sort of high level and not get too far into the weeds, but we wanted to provide a fair bit of information in the presentation for people who wanted to read into it a little bit more. Some of the key updates have to do with definitions and terminology. So there are new definitions since 2015 related to development and the impact of that. Heritage resources include features of significant architectural, cultural, historical, archaeological, and scientific interest. We're looking to standardize terminology between the Planning Act, the official plan, and local plans, so that it's clear when you're going back and forth between different documents that we're talking about the same things. And then so because of the things like defining upgrading for heritage properties, so that the people who are going to the official plan can see the guidance related to any work that they're looking to do for maintenance and repairs to the Ontario Heritage Act in Bill 23 modified some of the processes for listing and designating heritage properties. And so we'll look to align the official plan with that. Those changes all apply regardless, but by having the official plan policy, the one that again provides guidance and helps people understand what they're facing. If they are looking to have a property designated, or they find that their property is designated to support. We're also proposing to update the Heritage Register policy to require the register to be publicly available on the city's website. Official plan, or are they supposed to suggest it? Council. And there's been a lot of work that Stratford has done over the years related to heritage, and so we want to make sure that the city's cultural plan is embedded in the official planning policy, and the official planning policy to implement that cultural plan. I'm adding guidance on historical importance of national heritage features and cultural heritage landscapes, introducing clear official plan direction to support cultural heritage landscapes where applicable, and renaming different policy headings so that they align with other policies that you already have in place. So heritage buildings changes to landscape or landmark heritage buildings. We would also propose to update appendix 1 of the official plan, the designated, non-designated, or listed heritage properties in the downtown for heritage conservation district. And we'd like to identify historic streetscapes where applicable as well, so that, like I said, when people review the official plan and see what may apply to the property, it's very clear, and they don't necessarily have to go to a lot of different documents to find the information we need. We would also be updating the official plan's economic development and market square policies to further emphasize culture, tourism, public art, accessibility, prioritize links to heritage conservation, tourism, and economic growth, and include some references to the downtown BIA. Clarify heritage permitting requirements. That's sometimes a big question for folks. Is okay, what do I need to do? Like, when do I need to see the permit? And then another important consideration is accessibility as it relates to heritage buildings and how to make heritage buildings more accessible. Another consideration is heritage impact assessments. So if anybody's involved in development industry, that's sometimes a heritage impact assessment is required if there's potential for a new development adjacent to a heritage property within a heritage conservation district. So adding OP language that clarifies what the what needs to be included in an DHIA, will help streamline things. Sustainability is another one, and we'll talk a little bit about that because of very recent changes to the planning act, but sustainability is still a very important aspect in planning, and there are ways to help ensure that heritage buildings can still be sustainable and still help achieve some of those modern objectives and goals for energy efficiency, emissions reductions, and that sort of thing. So Schedule E, the Schedule E policy and mapping approach of the official plan, we're recommending to remove that and replace it with an evaluation-based heritage conservation district approach. This would require previously identified areas to be studied and evaluated using the Historical Heritage Act and relevant regulations to determine the appropriateness of future HCD designations. Again, for future looking, it doesn't change anything in the immediate term, but as things proceed, this would set up a new process that will be hopefully be clearer or a bit easier to navigate. And where warranted would apply to official plans, HCD policy framework, the guide to designation and management facility. And maybe we'll take a minute if there are specific questions about heritage and the official plan itself.
Questions from council at this time before Councillor Hennis, go ahead.
Mayor, when you say that, homes and businesses that have been previously designated heritages to be studied and evaluated, does that mean they're have to go through each one again?
No, through your chair, not necessarily. It would be more about making sure that we've got the inventory of the day and understand what the heritage attributes are, so that as if new development or redevelopment or renovations are taking place in those properties, there's a clear trigger for whether they need a heritage impact assessment or whether they need a sort of higher level of evaluation. I don't know if there's anything like sort of you wanted to add with this one.
When you say that, you don't know the work, because there's a lot of homes and.
Yeah, exactly. And there's massive changes to the end, but everything like most ways state does need to be evaluated, designated, with the time range, but with this official plan policy, it's more about making sure that the framework is in place and it's appropriate to existing, and refers to existing properties.
Okay, but that our heritage committee does quite a big job at
Oh, sure.
that.
Councillor Kid.
Through the chair, question about natural heritage features, specifically around the Avon River, which we had a discussion on that heritage. What can you do as far as official plans to work with sort of designating a part of that or protecting it or setting some?
For natural features, that's where the cultural heritage landscapes come into effect. So they can be designated very similar to a heritage conservation district, so that there are additional, let's say, a framework where you would designate the attributes of that landscape and have an additional policy paper for protecting the landscape. Sometimes that has to do with views or how the land is used, or the more light touches of a fact or something like that that recognizes it. So that's the general idea. So you've got heritage properties, which are individual properties, conservation districts, and then heritage landscapes, which is a broader open public area sort of designation of the plan.
Anything further at this time? Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you through the chair. This might be a question more for staff, but I did notice a reference in here to the community improvement plan. So it talks about implementing implementation of the key CIP recommendations. So I'm just curious as to how that's coming along.
So the CIP, as council and maybe some of the public knows, we haven't done many heritage related CIP work in the last few years. I think the work being done on the official plan from a cultural built heritage perspective isn't going to be too significant. We are still going to be preserving heritage, built heritage, cultural heritage attributes of our city. The CIP itself, we expect that once this official plan review gets completed and established, we need to look at CIPs from a wider lens with regard to we're looking at a CIP for housing, and there will be discussion in a few moments, discussion papers around sustainability and green space. So the built heritage component is, I don't see it as changing. But when we get back to doing the CIP, the community improvement planning work, because we haven't removed it, we haven't been funding it, and we will get back to that. And the work here is working on official.
Any other comments or questions at this time? Carry on.
Thank you. We'll move on to the green station, and this is related to natural heritage features and open space. Once again, the key policies that inform this discussion paper are the Planning Act again, of course, the Provincial Planning Statement, the Conservation Authorities Act, and we also review the Perth Natural Heritage System Study, which did include City of Stratford in its review. So I want to make sure that we can act on that soon. One of the key considerations of changing the policy landscape is the shift from provincial direction towards a more systems-based natural heritage approach, which means more acknowledgement of how natural heritage features are linked together, not even necessarily directly by a stream or a hedgerow or something like that, but with the acknowledgement that species do move between green spaces and water flows underground and else. So we'll be looking at it through that context. Moving on to clarify adjacent lands, buffers, and study requirements, and bringing those up to date, and strengthening tree planting policies. Recognize that even urban street trees are part of the natural heritage landscape cities. Also clarifying soil fire protection plans, policies, and protect those. Identifying land use decisions related to vulnerable areas. Pressing those. Of course, the official plan needs to be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and the new provincial planning statement includes slight updates to natural heritage policies, direction, and terminology to be that consistent. We'll want to strengthen the OP's approach beyond feature-based protection, like I mentioned, and more systems related evaluations. Improve clarity and predictability in development review by modernizing definitions and more policy tests. So often what happens in an official planning program is that people get very concerned about natural heritage sterilizing their property and protecting them from doing and most of the time it's not accurate. But we'll want to make sure that the policies are clear and easy to understand for folks who want to use the property. And of course, ensuring that the OP policies, the mapping, supporting technical work, and everything else function as an integrated package so that the city staff and applicants have the resources that they need to understand what's going on. Wetlands have had a bit of a rethink, so evaluation of provincially significant wetlands, that process has changed in recent years. So we'll need to update the policy related to that. We want to reinforce clarity for identification and long-term protection of significant wetlands. Ensure policy language supports consistent interpretation and reduces any ambiguity and uncertainty for applicants. And reinforce the importance of wetlands as ecological assets. Even where there are conditional, conditional policies for development of wetlands. So I think storage that sort of thing. And include policy to that. Part of our process is reviewing and updating buffer policies. The Natural Heritage Reference Manual is still in place and provides a lot of guidance on how policy should be written related to buffers or adjacent land areas and how that can affect development potentials. And we've got to clarify when a study is required to demonstrate no negative impact for development is proposed. I mentioned urban tree canopy. We'd like to reinforce the city's urban forestry plan and private tree preservation bylaw with some visual plan policies that reference those and provide more clarity. And apply tree canopy directions citywide if we can, so that in new and changing neighborhoods it still protects the tree canopy and ensures that the trees are there and healthy in the future. We'd also like to expand naturalization and tree planting policy direction beyond the downtown core through a broader citywide approach. Promoting green development. So we had some changes in the Planning Act related to this. Municipalities are no longer allowed to require sustainability measures through site plan control. But it doesn't prevent cities from still having green building guidelines and of course using other policies or other levers to encourage and incentivize low emissions and energy efficient development for green infrastructure in new development. And so we'll be taking a close look at the efficient plan policies and updating those so that they are still in compliance with the Planning Act, but hopefully continue to move direction towards energy efficiency or emissions clears. This can also include things like tree planting or stormwater retention, natural stormwater retention. Which is low impact development. And so we're looking to add policies or adjust policies that strengthen stormwater management direction for LID, low impact development. Improve clarity to reference recognized guidelines and best practices. So again, it's like the official plan is speaking the same language as for technical documents and hopefully just clear to people. It's a treat stormwater as a resource supporting hydrologic function, water quality, and groundwater recharge. So not necessarily just it's flooding the neighbor's property, but it's considered for purpose as well. And the last point, strengthening linkages between stormwater policy, natural heritage protection, and resilience outcomes. One of the things to say at the beginning is you're going to see a lot of overlap between these different papers because as we run in planning, everything's connected, and you can achieve a lot of goals by having these different subject areas tying together. We also want to enhance policy connections between urban design, sustainability, and resilience. So helping to ensure that when we develop things together, if it is designed in a way that connects sustainability and resilience objectives with natural heritage conservation, green infrastructure, climate change, adaptation, and mitigation, that can be a net positive output with development coming in. Strengthen policy integration between both form outcomes and ecological functions. So tree retention, green infrastructure, control water management again. And make an explicit connection between urban design objectives with climate mitigation and adaptation. Often urban design considerations are about how something looks. It's a little bit more about how it functions. And we're going to, of course, always improve clarity on how its objectives can be implemented. These are a few different number of points that we are touching on. So natural heritage system and connectivity, talked about that a little bit. Natural hazards, so obviously need to make sure that all of the natural hazard mapping is up to date and the policies are appropriate to ensure that property is protected. We'll go develop in areas where they're beyond risk. Parks and open space link into the green city idea as well, because they're man-made natural spaces. Like updated park policies to reflect legislative changes and recognize that these open spaces can be ecologically assets as well, and promote biodiversity and connectivity. And water resources, to strengthen water resources and policy direction by incorporating high-level source protection plan principles, reference to source protection plan so that it's all linked together and clear for the clear. And before we move on to the next discussion paper,
Questions or comments from council with regards to the green policy? Seeing that.
Next one is the connected and mobile city. So this is not just traffic, but also how we can get around credit cards. Key policies, again, as always, the planning act, provincial planning statement. Connecting the Southwest with draft transportation plan for Southwestern Ontario. We looked at and read, and of course, the city's draft transportation master plan 2023. So reviewing provincial direction related to transportation, mobility. We'll be looking to strengthen integration of land use planning and transportation planning to support a safe, sustainable, multimodal transportation system. Allowing growth and intensification of efficient use of existing and planned infrastructure before major expansions of highways, for example. Support transit-oriented development and improve local, regional transit connections where feasible. And strengthen policy support for green infrastructure and low impact development to complement traditional stormwater systems. And you can see how all these things are starting to link together. Your roads are also the primary rights of way where stormwater systems are located, sidewalks are located, bike lanes, transit, and those things can be supported through the types of development that are encouraged. The discussion here for the policy directions report for establishing a vision of a safe, sustainable, and multimodal transportation system. So to do that, looking to embed an official plan and vision that aligns transportation with broader city building priorities. So it's sustainability, everything else. Promoting development designed to be sustainable to support public transit and people actually support pedestrians so that it's safer, both who are walking around. Using planning act tools to support development near transit, including protected major transit station areas and minimum density targets where appropriate. Of course, big changes with coach train service recently that need to be considered. Yeah. Facilitating densification and infill that leverages existing infrastructure and supports transit supported densities. And that sort of leads right into formally adopting a complete streets approach to the official plan. When you're working with a dense urban center that's surrounded by maybe less dense areas, naturally people tend to drive into that center. But once they're here, they walk around. And so it is necessary to make sure that the streets serve both of those purposes well. And so embedding complete streets principles across all stages of planning and development are important, not just final road designs, new roads, all services, prioritizing active transportation and intensification, infill, and redevelopment areas. Sometimes how people arrive at a building on foot is not even a second thought, particularly in lower density new development. Explicitly link transportation planning with public health, climate change mitigation, and equity considerations, and ensuring consistent application of complete streets principles across land use designations and street types. So the process that we usually go through when we're reviewing an official plan is we have these ideas in our heads that we read through, and if there's something there that seems like that policy doesn't quite address this thing, we try to make sure that it does. So we may update or tweak something so that the policy, instead of providing a barrier to achieving these objectives, actually encourages or supports the objectives more clearly. And these are things that happen in official plans over time inadvertently. But that's what the review is for. The policy direction paper also talks about defining the transportation hierarchy. So what's most important? Is it fast traffic through an area, or is it neighborhood pace for folks walking around? Is it a truck transport? Something else. So we'd be looking to define and adopt a transportation hierarchy that prioritizes vulnerable road users so that people are safe in planning and design. Applying a design from the outside in approach where appropriate. So start on the outside of the roads and move inwards to prioritize pedestrians, cyclists, so micro-mobility, scooters are now, public transit, trucks, and cars as well. And requiring contextual evidence for constraints to limit full application of the hierarchy. So it's not always it's not always physically possible to accommodate separate infrastructure for each mode of transportation. It's not necessarily appropriate in some locations. So making sure that the official plan policy has consideration for that. And then the big part is implementing the transportation master plan through the official plan so that the two work together. And through that, we'll be looking at road classification standards, helping that inform the official plan. It's not necessary that the official plan reprints or compiles everything that the city is already doing, but we want to make sure that we're referencing things and reflecting and supporting the work that's already been done. So we want to apply that hierarchy to road width decisions, road functions and classifications, and review right-of-way standards through the complete streets and active transportation plans. And using official plan direction to inform future bylaw standards and development application expectations. It's a 30-year plan. The expectation will be updated every 10 years or so. Other infrastructure plans have a similar time frame, and it'll be updated from time to time as well. So we want to be thinking ahead quite a bit. But to improve guidance on street connectivity for pedestrians and strengthen official plan guidance on rapid complete streets approach and the hierarchy. Looking at pedestrian walk sheds through street networks and pedestrian connections that shorten walking distances and promote active modes of transportation. So that it's as natural to walk to the store as to hop in the car to get there. And identify strategic areas where street systems can be improved to support direct, safe pedestrian movement. Yeah. Like I said, integrating land use and transportation planning through neighborhood design is an important consideration. Some folks say best transportation plan is good land use plan. We're looking to enshrine key land use and development considerations from the transportation master plan in the new official plan through things like permitting mixed uses to support shorter trips and increased walking in the city, site planning that enables pedestrian scale and street oriented development rather than necessarily big seas of parking. Active transportation facilities as an objective informing neighborhood design. So think about how new subdivisions develop, it's usually just cars, and that can frustrate those other objectives of mixed use or things supported. And looking at pedestrian washes and preventative traffic calming as the standard for the design consideration to reduce safety risks. Some of the things that we considered are reduce minimum parking requirements for new development versus where appropriate to support modal shift and market driven supply. And to integrate diverse land uses to support compact communities where shops and services are within walking distance. We're also looking to enhance policy support for green infrastructure and low impact development. So this is what I was talking about in the Green City paper. Ensuring that the road network and the useful right of way is able to accommodate some of that infrastructure as well. Particularly in public roads, so off the curb where street trees are or planting rates are located, that can serve a purpose for low impact design. And policy direction to strengthen opportunities for intensification to leverage existing. This is about identifying where infrastructure exists, where there is existing capacity and the ability to add development that will make better use of that, while supporting population growth, new job growth, and encouraging kind of development that supports these other objectives. Let's talk a little bit about the connected city. Questions with that?
Questions? Seeing that.
Thank you. The next paper is a sustainable city. So we talked about the green city, national heritage, talked about connected city, how that can connect to natural heritage and protect natural heritage. Sustainable city is more focused on the explicit sustainability, lower emissions, energy efficiency, and other considerations. So the official plan or the planning act, of course, big influence on this. Central planning statement includes direction that planning authorities must address, must prepare for the impacts of changing climate. And so that's an important consideration. We also looked at the corporate energy and emissions plan 2023 and community climate action plan 2024. From the provincial perspective, like I said, the official plan must address climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency. We do have some limited ability due to some changes at the provincial level to implement some of that, but the official plan can still include strong goals and objectives and policies for a broader scale. Updating the growth management and community design direction will support compact transit support in complete communities, which again helps reduce energy use and emissions. Strengthening policy direction for energy conservation and efficiency, green infrastructure, and climate resilient infrastructure planning. Buildings can be some of the most energy intensive uses in a city. Designing buildings, designing subdivisions and new development to be more energy efficient can have huge positive impacts for the community. We also want to make sure that the official plan language and definitions are in alignment with or most up to date with new provincial direction and other plans and strategies in place. We also would like to update the vision and guiding principles of the official plan to recognize climate change adaptation and mitigation as driving forces behind the official plan and key considerations. And establish Stratford as a leader in climate action and sustainable growth through an updated vision framework. And of course, the official plan can't do all that on its own. Still need to be other initiatives that support it. I mean, publicly, but the official plan is a big way for the city to communicate to the development community and to residents that climate change and sustainability are important. The last point is just to ensure climate change mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency are reflected as foundational policy objectives across the efficient planning chapters. So again, as we're reviewing, we're thinking, how do these policies, how does this policy section talk about sustainability? And if it doesn't, then where can we add that in? Great. The sustainability strategy and policy related to sustainability and the efficient plan can be refreshed and help encourage a climate lens and useful decision making through the official plan. And so if we can update those policies, this would help require major city decisions to consider opportunities to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Also to help implement the city's net zero emissions goal by 2050 as an overarching goal for the city and the official plan. We would establish a local approach by defining climate change in Stratford's context and explain why it's addressed in the official plan and what it means specifically for Stratford. Sometimes the official plans have these big, broad, bold statements, but it's not necessarily tied directly to the community where it exists, and we want to make sure that that's not the case here. We are specific. And strengthen the official plan policy requirements and language connecting growth management and range planning and ability to together, having that for more holistic approach. And then this all leads into updating the policy framework to align with the city-led climate initiatives. So, I mentioned climate change, community climate action plan. So we want to reference that and implement its recommendations. Reference corporate energy emissions plan and the transportation master plan, key components of the city's overall climate response. And align climate-related language and terminology across city documents and the official plan so that they're all speaking the same language. There are also some defined terms with the new provincial planning statement that we want to make sure are consistent in the official plan, including impacts of the change in climate, green infrastructure, and alternative energy system. And we want to use consistent language to support coordinated implementation across departments and reduce implementation issues developed with you, so that all departments are on the same page. This slide again is about how these different subject matters all link together. So facilitating compact mixed-use development helps encourage walking, cycling instead of driving, help reduce emissions. And I think we've heard that. Safe and resilient multimodal transportation system, again, same idea. When the transportation system is safe, people are more likely to walk or bike. We'll be looking to update policy direction to support multimodal transportation system. And there are opportunities to include policies that encourage, at least if not required, things like bicycle parking, electric vehicle charging stations, different opportunities or bike storage areas in the development, that kind of thing as well. To encourage people to get out of the parks. And we also have a note there about reducing or eliminating minimum parking requirements. So sustainable development and green development standards, like I mentioned, Planning Act no longer allows you to require green development standards through the site planning process, but there is still the opportunity to include official planning policies that serve as guidance for new development to be more sustainable and green. And so we would be adding policies in the official plan or refining policies to help support that. We can also include policies that encourage renewable and alternative energy systems and net zero development. Again, it's hard to require these sorts of things. It can be an extra cost for development, but like I said, the official plan is a big statement from the city about what the priorities are and showing showing the development community what's important and helps for them to develop a way that helps achieve those objectives. So to promote and encourage new and existing development to achieve net zero energy and or emissions profiles where appropriate, possible, and provide explicit policy support for the corporate energy and community energy planning where applicable, including potential district energy. Sometimes developers are interested in implementing something like that. Resilient infrastructure and servicing is a key component to sustainability. So making sure that stormwater management is resilient to climate change and extreme weather events, introducing policies supporting sustainable and resilient infrastructure, including life cycle cost considerations and long-term funding approaches to help implement these things. This is where, again, the initial plan is a bit more aspirational rather than requiring things to take place, and it still would require additional action from cities to implement. But it starts the conversation at least and helps show priorities. And discussing natural assets, ecosystems, and natural hazards. So we're looking to support the preservation and enhancement of the natural heritage system, which help reduce stormwater impacts and extreme weather events. Reinforce tree protection tools and cover targets and optimization through planning direction. And exploring opportunities to support local food systems as well in urban agriculture, including retaining and including community gardens, support community gardens. And the official plan is an opportunity here to acknowledge the relationship between climate change and increased risk associated with natural hazards. We'll look to make sure that the official plan addresses potential for natural hazards and perhaps has some objectives for mitigating those. So before we move on to that, questions in sustainable city.
Questions or comments, Councilor?
Through the mayor, when I think about sustainability, I also think about our financial sustainability. Do we have enough drivers toward that end? And I'll give an example. Increasing density lowers our replacement costs per unit on infrastructure. It also, we keep our city more compact. We build fewer new roads that need to be replaced, and those sorts of guiding principles. I think I would like to see included if they're not already.
Absolutely agree with that. Who wants to report? Touches on that. So the other policy directions paper may touch on that a little bit. But the connected city and sustainable city papers do acknowledge the benefit of right-sizing infrastructure, intensification, financial impact intensification, and communication scope too. And that's all supported from the planning statement, talks about this a lot, planning act talks about this a lot as well. So definitely emphasize that.
Thank you. Other questions, Councilor?
Thank you through the chair. Thank you for these policy papers. So far, I really like the idea of redevelopment standards. We've been asking for that, or some of us have for quite a few years. It is disappointing that we aren't going to be able to enforce them, but I think it's important for us to include them in the official plan. And some of the things like the tree canopy targets and that type of thing. I'm wondering, is it part of the official plan scope to do an inventory of where we're at now, so that when we're setting goals for what our targets might be, we know how far we need to go?
So doing a current tree inventory isn't part of the plan project scope, but if there has been any work on that, okay. So I don't think there has been any work on that, but at this point, the official plan can throw that as a priority, provide some direction saying that for a commitment that the city will undertake the tree inventory. Or other approaches could include something like where is new development, either tree protection or something that sort of ensuring a net increase in tree canopy. So recognizing that you're not necessarily, probably not gonna save all the trees on the property when it's gonna be developed, but if you can encourage a net increase for new planting, then that can help move towards improvement. So, two different ideas on. Educated rights.
That's
Follow.
Just, and this may be coming up in the growing city, policy paper as well, but I'm just thinking about some of the questions that we've had in the past about, things. We, for instance, the official plan had targets for us as far as density goes, a certain number of medium densities, certain number for percentages. So I'm wondering if those type of I just find it, we might need data to start with so that we can, when we're setting targets, we already know what we have. So that we can say, okay, we want to intensify, so, but how much, what does that look like? And as we're looking at different types of development and we're saying, oh, we need to intensify, but I think we need more data as to what type of intensification do we need, what are our targets for, you know, apartments versus, you know, sort of mid-level townhouses and that type of thing.
Director Beveridge.
So the work on these 4 papers clearly don't touch on those figures there. Watson and Associates has worked on the other paper is a growing city and it's a land needs assessment. We've done the work about a year and a half, 2 years ago, when the circumstances that I presented to the council on before the project had a lapse. I did not want to come to council or the public with data that is essentially 18 months, 2 years old. So we are updating the growth, we're updating the land absorption, the building permit data, all those things, make sure we're working with current data. So in Stewart's report, talking about that growing city report, the land needs assessment, how much land will we need, if any, et cetera, the types of dwelling units you're talking about, Councilor. That'll be coming in that growing city report, and it will be in a venue like this, not at a council meeting to discuss that paper on its own. These 4 papers, I'm not trying to put them on a rung below that, but these are very important papers. But that growing city paper is going to be one where the rubber really hits the road. So I do apologize that we can't be answering some of those questions, but I do think that paper in and of itself will be a topic to its own.
Councilor McCabe.
Through the mayor, question regarding the direction regarding renewable energy, alternative energy systems. I'm thinking about this probably in terms of LDCs and but as the energy that we consume comes closer to our communities. Are you indicating that there is a way that we can develop policy about where that might exist within the city, or that it's a priority, or?
Through you, Mayor. One of the trends that we're seeing a lot, battery storage. And so far I've been in very rural areas. But you are surrounded by rural areas here. And I think it's important to have something that will address that potential, as well as maybe solar, not necessarily solar farms, but implementation of solar panels and different things. District energy was something that I mentioned. Having a policy framework or evaluating those or referencing it so that, you know, it might be an idea that a developer has, and then seeing if there's policy there that encourage or help facilitate district energy could be a thing to push that. So it's absolutely in the realm for the official plan, and I think our recommendations for that. But I think there are solutions.
follow up.
And a follow-up on, making developments electric vehicle, ready. What tools do we have right now, or according to the most recent, correction of the province to encourage them?
And through you, Mayor. So again, the province has changed the legislation related to that as well. So they've prohibited the ability for cities to require electrical vehicle charging for a facility. That doesn't prevent the official plan from having policies that encourage it. I might need to take another look to see if subdivision or condo approvals could require it. I don't think they can anymore, it changes. But I mean, sort of laughing about this at work, but like, these have ways of encouraging things. Municipalities have broad authority to offer incentives for different things. We improvement plans are one of those, but other programs that can do that. And simply through the development review process, sometimes if official plan is a clear priority and planners are speaking with developers that, you know, we've got a lot of options here, it'd be great if you could do this. Sometimes developers will agree to that. And roughing in that infrastructure can be a big first step. So particularly for homeowners, residential homeowners, not having an opportunity to add a charging station because it would require blowing out part of the garage wall or something, because it's not roughed in any way, can be a big disincentive. But if you can encourage developers to do something more to rough it in. I live in an apartment building built in the 60s, and the parking garage is actually an opportunity to have some specific electrical vehicle charging in any of the interior spaces. Just wouldn't work. So if it was built today, even if it were required, it might be encouraged.
Through you, which are going to speak about the sentence, but it's not going to be school.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, I have two things. So. Are you basically saying that, I'm just trying to remember the time when I want to say this. So I believe right now, say it was 2018, I don't know when it started, that any new development, basically in the garages or whatever, had to have the wiring and everything there. Has that been taken away?
Yeah, well, so through you, Mayor. I believe that was added to the building code. And I think they are reviewing that. But the Bill 98 included language that, as it wasn't specifically addressed in the planning act, now it's supposedly prohibited, probably or required to talk about. There's a big change, and for us, for planners, it's tricky to implement because, like I mentioned, the planning statement still says that you have to have policies that support energy efficiency, that support climate change mitigation, and that sort of thing. So there's a bit of a push and pull there, and so we need to look at those policies and try to strengthen the encouraging part, even if we can. Better make a max spend going above or require it.
Anything to add there, right? See you nodding.
Here you would, yes, I was, and then I think they drawing their spoke to the kind of that ranking. Yes, the BPS is still encouraging, and there's even shop statements in there. But the recent legislative changes are sort of speaking in another language in our area.
Thank you. Councilor, next question. Councilor Anderson.
Yes. So my other one was, several years ago, I sat in the Energy and Environment Committee, we had Cannon Hall come and talk to us about, as we're putting in new streets and developments, we should be putting in the geothermal, you know, the pipeline, so that people could go back if they want.
Right.
And now we've seen what has happened in the world with the price of gas and what could happen quite quickly, and it could happen again. Do you see cities moving towards that? Have you heard of anything like that?
For you, Mayor, yes, I can't think of any specific examples right now.
No, that's fine.
But there have been when a city has a large, redevelopment area or large greenfield area where they're really taking the initiative on setting up development, then there's a clear opportunity to be very proactive to build in some of those things. In Ontario, the approach is usually, here's a broad piece of land, blank slate. Come to us with your pitch, and the industry comes in to suggest what they want to do with it. It's less often, sometimes in urban Ontario, city will own a large piece of property, not a lot of investment going on, so they'll make the effort to set things up the way that they want it to be. And that's where you may see district energy or rights of way set up so that it's clear bioswales and natural stormwater management, filtration, that kind of thing. So the opportunity is there. I'm just waiting on whether any of the big places that I'm thinking right now actually will implement stuff. Brian's got to be included the planning, I'm not sure how the city goes into that.
I guess what I'm wondering is saying we could say by 2030, no more natural gas lines will be in subdivisions. Are we even allowed to do that with all the legality things that the gas companies have? Or is that what, should I ask that now? I don't know.
Director Beck,
So through your staff and taking some notes of this, what we can do if council is appropriate, we can follow, when we meet again, when we come back to the growing city paper, we can start with some of these questions that are answered about this meeting.
Okay. I know it might be a bit deep for.
Through you, but the back to natural gas, yes, I believe there's recent legislation that prohibits municipalities from prohibiting that.
I thought so.
Yes.
other comments, Councilor Bean.
Thank you to the mayor. So as I read through these papers, each individual one, I find, they're all good things. But then when I put them all together and have a growing concern about affordability and what this is gonna do to the average person, i.e. taxpayer. One thing being through like what we would call, I guess what it's called mission creep, where you have to all of a sudden, we're gonna do all these things, so now we have to hire more staff and have to build up, and it just like builds up administration and all these layers which then cost people. So I guess what would the role of the official plan, or I would like to see the whole thing kind of in through a lens of also affordability, that it would also carry equal weight to all of the other topics that we set as a priority, because I know affordability is a priority. How do you see that taking place within the official plan?
Through you, Mayor, it is, mission creep is a good term for it, because what I see over and over again in future plan projects is that there's a lot of priorities. So in this case, we've got 5 different policy direction reports. And other projects with more than that. And so it seems like stacking more and more requirements on top of things. The approach that we try to take in crafting the official plan is not so much a stacking of things, but the integration so that it is clear that one thing supports the other and leads into the other. And hopefully in a way that it's easy to implement. So rather than having a general statement that says, for instance, new subdivisions shall be built in a sustainable way. It's so broad that a developer and the planner could argue about it for months and months and, resubmissions on site plan or anything else for ages without reaching it. Agreement between them and going to a decision. So what we try to do is provide policies that have clear, measurable kind of objectives, so that when the planner says, show us how it conforms with the official plan, the developer has a clear, almost checklist. That okay, so they're going to have to look at stormwater and provide a stormwater management report. That's really saying, I think. The intent is never, well, for me, anyway, the intent is not to make the official plan more complicated from one iteration to the next. And it's very clear, so that you don't have differences depending on how it's interpreted, so that you don't necessarily have to get your own ecologist to fight with the city's ecologists over whether or not something is in or out of protection area. Or whatever the state for instance, and that kind of thing. And that's one way to reduce costs. The official plan can't do everything. There are still gonna have to be experts who review the submissions that come in and determine if they meet policies. But the other key thing is that the official plan is implementing the provincial direction. So the provincial plan statement already says you have to protect the natural heritage features. You have to have your infrastructure efficient, financially viable and efficient use of infrastructure. The official plan is to say how to do that. So that's what hopefully we're trying to do. And as far as housing affordability, that with the block for the next time. I hope that makes some.
Councilor Beatty, go ahead.
I think so, a little bit. Like, for instance, I met with the city council from Vancouver who had implemented a whole bunch of great ideas, but what it ended up doing was stopping all affordable building within the city limits because just the one item that they needed for power in a house made that house itself, before you even put a shovel in the ground, cost like something like $200,000 before you even started. So things like that, I just don't want to see unintended consequences. Like if we have the affordability lens on it for the greater good of everyone. That's good.
Director?
Leadership. To sort of answer some of those too, I think council will see, we've had some developers that come and present their subdivision plans or their urban, like infill redevelopment plans. And some developers are catering more to the types of developments where sustainability, energy conservation, those types of measures will be implemented into their developments. And then we've got other developers come where they're looking to tend more to that sustainable piece, or sort of the affordable piece, right? So I don't think we would try, like it's going to be difficult to take one development and hit that utopian perfect center on every single one. We're gonna have some that are gonna be at one end of that pendulum and then others that are at the others, but we look at what's getting developed on a regular basis and we plan staff, we reporting to council is, okay, and I'm just sort of hypothetical scenarios here. Okay, we've been looking at the data, we're meeting our density marks, we're meeting our density targets, but we may not be meeting our affordable targets. So that's maybe where we got to do some policy intervention or maybe look at that sort of calendar year. What do we need to do to sort of move the needle in that direction? But it could be something where you've had a lot of affordable housing being developed on a certain in the calendar year, housing structure, et cetera. But maybe we're not meeting some of those sustainable and energy efficiency targets. So that's what we'll try to do once the official plan is adopted is report and monitor what's being built, what targets we're hitting, which ones we need to focus more on, and maybe there'll be programs, whether council at the time uses incentives, whether we use more stick approaches, we don't know. But I think with the official plan can do set some targets, and we as staff will be coming to you regularly, if not twice a year, if not more, about what we are seeing. We need to monitor that. The students who were here from UW about a month or two ago, that's what they're talking about. We can't just adopt a plan and have it adopted and forget about it. We got to keep monitoring and coming back and talking to themselves about what marks we're hitting and which ones we're not.
Other comments, Councilor Nigel and Councilor Burbank.
To the mayor, you mentioned targets, and are those like municipality targets or the provincial targets? You know, what authority do we have versus the province?
Who wants to handle this? Okay.
Through your worship, most of them will be council established targets. Some will be provincially led targets through the ultimately through the PPS. Some targets council may have already established in some of their supporting plans, such as transportation. We will be doing our Parks and Rec master plan, and that'll have some targets as well. So, yeah, there's a bit of a mix there.
Thank you. Councilor Rebecca?
Thank you for the share, just a look at how some of these things like the sustainable city, the connected and mobile city can add to people's affordabilities once they move to a neighborhood. If their house is more efficient, if they don't have to worry about floods in their basement and insurance claims. If they can possibly take public transit or walk somewhere, those things all affect people's affordability level or their day-to-day costs. So with some of these, it may not be obvious at the front end, but I think they do add to affordability for people as they move forward. But it takes a while to get there. But if we plan the neighborhoods properly, then people will be able to save money in various different ways.
Councilor Beatty, go ahead.
I do have another question in regards to thank you, Mayor, affordability, but so I was just reading an article recently where Sarnia had an affordable housing project development having and came to a halt because and they're now having to deal with the Ontario Land Tribunal and it's a big problem. And so I'm just gonna, and in the article it says that Sarnia had no definition for supportive housing in its zoning bylaw, and so now they're considering amendments to their official plan to encompass fully supportive housing or supportive housing. And since we're in the process of developing our official plan, and I am working hard to get affordable nonprofit housing developers to come to Stratford to help solve some of our housing problems, I'm hoping to not run into those same kind of things. So what steps can we take to ensure that our land use policies are flexible enough that we can have those type of developments in our residential areas? I guess that's something that if we're in the process of developing, I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Pretty weird. That's one of the things that we have an eagle eye for. So everyday official plans, and not to say this are used because I'm big, but sometimes have very exclusionary policies about supportive housing, group homes, or halfway houses or rooming houses and that kind of thing, to prevent them from being located within your traditional residential neighborhoods. And that's not helpful. So we look for those policies, we look for those blind spots and gaps in policy, and we try to make sure that that those are either explicitly permitted or at least that there are policies that say when they can be established in neighborhoods. But made a note, we'll make sure that take a close look at that. It often, you know, at the official plan level, it'll often say a range of residential uses shall be created within this designation. And then it's the zoning bylaw that really has the nitty-gritty. And again, different municipalities have different terms for what you're talking about, and often have older regulations that are not permissive. And so we're working on a zoning bylaw review. Again, that's one of the first things that was looking for. It's also not strictly legal to prohibit things like supportive housing or those kinds of residential uses. So we'll make sure that we understand.
Other comments or questions? If I may, I just sometimes I see it as a balancing act between that sustainability targets and developers that which will work within those standards as well. And you want to you're blending in the affordability as Councilor Beatty has suggested, and the environmental standards, but also putting in the targets that developers want to work within. Councilor Henderson.
We've noticed a slight change in some of the trends of development. We've actually had a couple of site plans recently that were including accessible apartments. So that was interesting to finally see that. And I'm just waiting to see when they're starting to include accessible homes. I know they have to have a market for it and all that, but it just, like we just had a development built on Waterloo and Falstaff Street and steps leading up to it. So people that live in that place are never gonna have an accessible issue. none of their family or friends are gonna have accessibility. There's. I mean, I'm talking mobility, and then obviously people got other accessible issues, you're so able to get in, but in this day and age. And there's so much knowledge, it just blows my mind that developers are still building homes with so many steps and not accessible, you know, or at least including, you know, the single level developments. You know, they're building, you know, townhouses and stacked townhouses and, you know, like, okay, now we need an elevator then, you know, like we just different things like that for the accessibilities. You know, we're having development going out there to 50 and up, and I asked the question, like, is it gonna be accessible? Like, no, hello, we're getting to that age where we need it, or we might already need it, you know, but. I'm on the accessibility committee, you hear people say how hard it is for them to find a place that's accessible for them unless they build it themselves, you know? So there's that component in there too.
Other comments, questions? Judy, go ahead.
Uh, going back to the parking requirements or the conversation about beginning to kind of lift some of the requirements for that. As I'm reading through again, all of them individually I see as good and have good merit, but then when I think, okay, so what are the safeguards that we would have in place that we don't allow the official plan to kind of creep over from being something that guides governance and policy into trying to shift behavior of individuals. So like saying, well, we're not gonna, require parking spaces, so now they can't have a car, they have to do this or that, like it just shifts behavior rather than just being over, yeah. I think you get it.
Pretty hard. Parking requirements are funny because what we see from time to time is developers who want to exceed the minimum number of parking because they recognize that there is a higher demand for parking than what the zoning regulation says. So in some contexts, the developer wants to reduce the amount of parking. And so you zone bylaw limits or grant variance because they can't fit it on the site that they want to work in, or they know that there's a lot of transit support in the area and that sort of thing, and it reduces costs as well. But on the other hand, with a developer who is wanting to exceed the minimum parking by 50% or something like that, because they felt real strongly that they needed that to attract investors so they have and want. So it is kind of again, balance is the word. But it's a market demand sometimes too. So somewhere like that's downtown, if you can accommodate that parking without taking up an entire city lot, that's probably good. That's a better thing for the neighborhood, for the urban fabric of the downtown. Might be less of a concern if the more low density area. So it's, I guess the jury's still out as far as what the long-term impact of reducing or eliminating parking requirements is, but over the number of decades where we've had minimum parking requirements, it has been a detriment to some developments in some places. Because of the extra costs, the extra land, it can end up with artificial height capping, because you can't add more units because you can't accommodate the parking property. And in general terms, if you need parking, then you won't move into the places that don't have parking. That can still have spillovers, people still move into places and just assume they'll park on the street, and that can still have problems. So there are communities that do their parking studies to see what the impacts are, but it's always a consideration. Particularly, like I said, you're sort of an island, Stratford's kind of an island here, and a lot of people ride in. Or if you want to leave town, probably riding to leave town, but that may change over time, particularly with people transit. Yeah.
Just as a follow to that, I guess less on the point of the actual parking reduction, more on the point of making a policy that tries to curb behavior or force behavior.
I've said a couple of times, the official plan can't do everything. So it is really only governing how new development is approved. And so if developers don't want to build something with no parking, then there's nothing that would require them to build something with no parking. So we're not even contemplating, I don't think we've added anything but a maximum parking rate. Some places do, but we haven't contemplated that. And I wouldn't foresee any situation. I wouldn't really foresee a new development in Stratford, except maybe down to where there is really no parking required, or no parking line. It's really about seeking the community-wide goals and priorities, but it's never about forcing somebody to do something. It's about allowing people to do things. It's usually the way it goes. It's either prohibited, so you shall not build in this protected wetland, or it's permitted. You may direct it all something that is net zero as a parking kind of thing. It's rarely the kind of force people to do something.
Director Bettridge,
Through you, workshop, Councilor B, just so I'm clear about the influencing behavior, is that sort of suggesting maybe the official plan, what we've seen on the slide is maybe going too harsh towards reducing parking, so that we're trying to really discourage the private automobile use? Is that sort of what you're trying to improve?
Sure, Mayor, it's not just that particular topic, like it's that, there's all of things, but I'm just saying that when we have great ideas and we implement them as policy, but if we have the intent to sort of stop a behavior or force a behavior, I'm hearing that that's not the case, so I feel like the answer is, it brought resolved to what I was concerned about.
any other comments or questions? Before we take this area. See the other.
Hey. One slide left. So next steps. Following this meeting, like I mentioned, we'll bring in all of our input and feedback that we received, and put together an engagement summary that outlines everything that's sort of been suggested in addition to what's in the policy direction papers, and that will all move forward into phase 4, which is focused on putting together the draft new official plan. And so the process that planning to follow is draft the new official plan policies, as well as preparing maps, schedules to accompany the official plan policies, and lead to a statutory open house so that the official plan receives feedback down the road, and a statutory open meeting with council, coordinate and formal public comments before it's adopted. We are also proposing that we bring the draft to council for endorsement before it is submitted in draft to the province. So the process that the province requires is that this be provided to them at least 90 days before the statutory public meeting, and so that they can review any comments that they have for consistency with the PPS and everything else. Of course, with the election, this will extend that timeline, so they'll have more. It's better, like to talk about how we want to approach this. Right. So through your worship, so what Mr. Alexander is saying is we might get the draft official plan document in a position for this council's endorsement. If and when we get there, and hoping we do, if we do, that would be the WSP, that's done completing the assignment, the work. The timing is such that, yes, we're leading into an election. It could be a scenario where into the next election or the next term of council, the next term of council looks at what we got, and there might be some tweaks, adjustments, etc. That could be done then, or there's a council that wants a more substantive type of review or changes. They don't like what you see, they see, etc. So we will cross that bridge when we get there, but. What I do want to say though, the work that we've presented and worked on, it is in accordance with the current planning act and the PPS. There's nothing there that we wouldn't be either telling the next term of council, unless there's significant legislative changes between now and the next term of council, but. Yes, there's some timing issues with the province here that could factor in, but what I do believe is this term of council can give its endorsement at minimum to an official plan. And let it be moved on for ultimate adoption by the province in the next room.
Councilor Anderson.
So I have a question. So say the next election in the province, you get a different party and they decide, you know, climate and all these things are important, once you put them back in. But that's having those statements like the green policy and all that, will it be an easy fit for us to just continue on then? Are we sort of thinking that way, like have it so it's ready, that we both ways?
Sure, thank you. With the resources that council has added this term, and I'm pointing to the gentleman's thing that went that our policies provided in our planning department. So if council seems interested in whether it's climate sustainability or affordability, et cetera, like those topics, we can be nimble and our department can move quick to, yes, there's been a new plan adopted, but there's a new avenue we want to go down and re-explore. We can do that quite quickly. We do not have to wait for a next review. I think as it's been both a benefit and a hindrance that we're doing an official plan review, because it's such an endeavor that we've got to focus on the official plan review, and then we put a load off once this official plan is adopted and in place, and we can maintain it. We can make adjustments. If there's something that's sparking interest of council or the public that we need to sort of refocus on something, well, we will be able to do that with as a focused amendment to the official plan without having to do a full-on official plan review that might take years.
What I was meaning was more like, some of the terms when you were saying it, you're saying we can't officially, you know, it's been, how did you say that? Basically, the government has changed the rules on that. But that doesn't mean we can't have policies until included, but we still have the phrase there, so it kind of acts as both, it acts as directing us to do policies and do it, but yet if the government, you say government, or the government is in, does a flip flop, because a policy, you know, people upset about it, you know, and even people that are hearing about this tonight, and hearing, what do you mean we can't do that anymore? You know, but we're actually sort of covered, aren't we? In a way?
Through you, Mayor, but yeah, the encouraging policies. The encouraging policies, as far as an official plan that goes, it wouldn't be difficult to change may to a shall. It should be supported by something like a specific planning report and study. Study, like an easy study. It could be simply council giving direction to say, given that things have changed, we want to make sure that the official plan addresses this and official planning department more see. And then the planning department would write a report and the change would be made.
Well, probably staff would come to us and say that because
Right.
they're more aware of what's changed.
But in terms of the likelihood of any of that, the current provincial government has changed the planning acts many times in the last 8 years. And they've even changed the provincial planning statement. So we don't know what the future holds. With policy direction.
Other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
And I'll turn it back to you, Madam Clerk.
Well, through your worship, returning to your agenda, There is a motion that the rules contained in sections 14.1 to 14.3 of the procedural bylaw related to delegations be suspended to permit members of the public in the gallery to provide comments on the official plan review discussion papers.
Thank you. Mover to suspend, Councillor Burbach, and move second by Councillor Nigel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed to any, that's unanimously carried. And so then moving forward, if there is a member of the public here that wishes to speak to council and to address the official plan review here tonight, if you raise your hand, then we'll call you forward. If you go out the back door there and come to the podium, when you get to the podium, just identify your name. We do not need your address, so I'll start over here if you want.
Do we have 5 minute break?
Sure.
While they're thinking about whether they want.
Yes, certainly.
Okay, thanks.
A little right here, and then you'll start with Miss Murray.
What?
Being reasonable, carry on. Just state your name for the clerk for the record and the floor is yours.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Merkel, and I am a public health promoter with Huron Public Health. I hold the built environment portfolio as well as serve as municipal liaison coordinator and the liaison to the state of Stratford. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, for letting me speak today. Over the past 2 years, I've had the privilege of reviewing and providing feedback on many official plans across our region, most recently for Blue Water and Central Huron. I review official plans line by line to look for the inclusion of health promoting policies. Good health is the foundation of a strong economy and a vibrant, resilient community. But did you know that many of the most important decisions that shape our health are made outside of a health center? In planning, in transportation, in housing, and in economic development. So when you embed health into your official plan, you're not just planning for growth, you're planning for people. You're making health a shared value across departments and sectors, and ensuring that every policy decision helps create the conditions where residents can live, learn, play, shop, and work, no matter their age, income, or background. When we talk about incorporating health into planning, we're talking about preserving and integrating natural environments, designing communities that support walking, cycling, and active lifestyles, supporting aging populations with accessible, inclusive design, prioritizing social connection and mental well-being through gathering spaces such as parks, playgrounds, community gardens, and downtown core, planning for housing that is affordable, dense, and walkable. I reviewed the various policy papers and have some comments on the following. The Cultural City paper, I was happy to see that Indigenous voices, histories, traditions, and cultures are included as well-known, respected, and integrated throughout the city. Meaningful engagement with Indigenous voices is encouraged. In a green city paper, in public health, we always appreciate when a systems-based approach is taken. For section 3.3, protect and develop the urban tree canopy, becoming pretty excited as a public health staff. Establishing a tree canopy covered target is great as it is something that can be measured over time. Trees have so many benefits: shade, improving air quality, and supporting mental well-being. And I don't imagine that many people have walked through TJ Road and said, wow, this forest is really stressing me. In a connected and mobile city and sustainable city papers, there are several key aspects that align with public health principles, including prioritizing vulnerable road users and pedestrians, transit-oriented development, complete streets, prioritizing active transportation, and linking transportation with climate mitigation and equity considerations. So I very much look forward to reviewing and providing feedback to the first draft once it is available. And I'm going to leave you today with this quote that I love from Plan H from BC Healthy Communities. Local government leaders are the most important decision makers when it comes to the physical design of communities. The designs and policy that you make about planning and land use will impact the health of current residents and future generations. Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience before Ms. Mitchell? Just to remind you, and certainly Ms. Merkel was right in the wheelhouse there, maximum 10 minutes here for your presentation. Welcome and whenever you're ready.
My name is Jane Marie Mitchell. The need for legally binding policies within the official plan to have provincial directives happen from the PPS is crucial for municipalities and residents to get the right housing in the right place for their own communities. The right housing in the right place means a lot of different things that are included in the PPS, which shall happen. Shall means mandatory to me, and not just enabling or meant to be aspirational. These things are not happening because we don't have the right language in our policies currently to back up the directives from the province. This is what is needed to enforce the current directives as well as the flexible language so that the future changes can be included as well. We've seen so many changes with the current government that we need a method of keeping up with them that is embedded in the legal requirements within the official plan for years to come. And I realized I wrote this before I heard what I did earlier, or what we heard earlier. We also have specific targets which should be in the official plan to guide local activity from the declaration of climate emergency in 2020. From this, there is the corporate energy emissions plan and the community climate action plan, which includes residents. The targets set are 30% lower emissions below the 2017 levels by 2030 and net zero by 2050. The PPS can help us achieve our goals if the official plan can include mandatory language for this. The One Planet Living Principle should be included in this plan as well. Stratford is unique, like other places, and has specific needs to meet for the current and future residents. Stratford has a very large percentage of seniors 65 years and better. Their needs for housing are constantly changing, as their lives do, from perhaps being a couple to being single, and from being healthy to having some temporary or other health considerations that need to be addressed. Stratford seniors make up 24% of the population in 2021. I expect that number will increase in the 2026 census. We need to provide the right housing for this quarter of the current population. The Canadian amount is 9.19%, and Ontario is 18.9% of seniors. The following has been taken from the PPS. Section 2.2 says, planning authority shall provide for an appropriate range and mix of housing options and densities to meet projected needs of current and future residents of the regional market area. 2.4 states planning authority shall support general intensification and redevelopment to support the achievement of complete communities by planning for a range and mix of housing options, intensification and more mixed use development. Strategic growth areas should be planned to accommodate significant population and employment growth in areas for education, commercial, recreational, and cultural uses, and to support affordable, accessible, and equity housing. Our own official plan states that affordable means 30% of the total income to allow for low and moderate income houses to have appropriate housing. This includes the younger generation just starting out, ages 20 to 29, and our seniors, who most have a smaller fixed income to live off. This can be in the form of apartments that are barrier-free, with elevators, as a large percentage of seniors will have temporary or more permanent mobility issues to deal with as they age. Mixed housing option can also include larger houses with commercial uses on the lower level, like a convenience store. This way, seniors can have within walking distance, commercial things that they can go and do. in their neighborhood. Think of McCarthy, there's not a lot of commercial there. Some housing should include a smaller footprint for seniors with no barriers to impede access to the whole dwelling or one level living spaces. Some others would also benefit from this type of housing, like those that need accessibility, which there is a provincial mandate to provide. Zoning and development permit bylaws should be forward-looking and facilitate opportunities for an appropriate range and mix of housing for all Ontarians. Within the planning framework of the provincially led planning system, planning authorities and decision makers may go beyond these minimum standards to address matters of importance to a specific community, unless doing so would conflict with any policies of the PPS. Smaller footprints that are affordable in these economic times should help to promote the use of green infrastructure that will give more equitable housing for owners and support energy conservation and efficiency. The inclusion of EV-ready houses as we change our driving habits, perhaps white roofs, geothermal and/or solar energy with south-facing roofs, and heat pumps for both heating and cooling without the need for fossil fuels would make housing more affordable both now and in the future and help lower emissions, which the PPS supports. Passive design that is airtight with ventilation strategies is another approach to help reduce greenhouse gases that can be utilized. Improving the tree canopy with native and adaptive species is a time-efficient way to help clean air quality well. Some, if not all of these strategies, can help prepare the residents for impacts of a changing climate. A green building code for Stratford's needs currently and for the future needs to be developed within the official plan so we can work towards the targets for our net zero in 2050. 2.9 states that planning authorities shall plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for the impacts of a changing climate through approaches that support the achievement of compact, transit supportive, and complete communities that also incorporate climate change considerations in planning for and the development of infrastructure that supports energy conservation and efficiency. Promote green infrastructure, low impact development, and active transportation. Protect the environment and improve air quality, and also take into consideration any additional approaches that help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and build community resilience to the impacts of changing climate. This language includes shall, prepare, support, promote, protect, and help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This language is all positive and needs to be turned into positive actions that are forward-thinking and need to be implemented now in the official plan to build that community resilience for the impacts of the changing climate in which we currently are living in. The need for legally binding policies within the official plan is crucial to have provincial directives happen from the PPS for municipalities and residents to get the right housing in the right place for their own communities.
Any comments or questions from council? Any other presentations at this time? Other presentations? And third call for presentations from the public at this time. Seeing none, again, Burke, I'll turn it back to you.
Your worship, as noted on the agenda, there is a staff recommendation that council receive the official plan review discussion papers for information, and that the discussion papers be used to support council discussion, public and stakeholder engagement, and the development of policy directions for the updated official plan.
Thank you. And I'll note that through the questions and comments from both council and residents, this will aid in the further development of the policy. And as notes were being taken during your questions. So having said that, is there a motion, mover for the item? Councillor Bean will move, second by Councillor Burback. Any questions? See none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous. Carried. Next item.
Item 4 is reading of the bylaws, and there's one bylaw to be considered, which is the confirmatory bylaw. It requires first and second reading and third and final reading.
Mover first is Councillor Hunter, second by Councillor Knight. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried, and mover for third and final. Councillor Bean will move, second by Councillor Niger, thank you. Any discussion? I'll call the question, all in favor, opposed to bid, and that's unanimous and carried. And just prior to adjourning, I want to thank our public for coming forward tonight to make their comments known. And a special thank you to Mr. Alexander for coming forward and making your presentation, and to staff for their work leading up to this. So having said all that, motion to adjourn the special council meeting. Councillor Henderson will move, second by Councillor Bruyback. All in favor? Opposed, if any, and we are adjourned.